Business news now, and we return to the UK, where new Prime Minister Liz Truss inherits the nation's biggest cost of living crisis in a generation. Ms. Truss has to come up with measures to contain soaring energy prices within days, and multiple media sources have reported that Team Truss plans to freeze energy prices near current levels at a cost of £100 billion per year. The new Premier also wants to cut taxes and raise defence spending, and analysts are wondering where the money will come from. Well, here to discuss this story and the other business headlines of the day, including some disappointing growth numbers out of South Africa, is our ICE correspondent, Laurie Laird. Good to see you, Laurie. So,
good evening,
Liz,
Charles.
Good evening to you. Liz Truss becomes Prime Minister. The most immediate of her challenges, of course, keeping the doors open on many businesses and homes in the face of the energy crisis. What are you expecting?
Absolutely. I mean, her first task is to keep the lights on. She has such a daunting economic inbox, and she is not, while she has worked, she's had a couple of roles at the Treasury. She's not necessarily economic expert, but her team has been very busy today in briefing the media. And what appears to be coming together is a package that would freeze, as you said, freeze energy bills at roughly their current level, roughly the level that was announced a couple of weeks ago, a cap at about basically, it would be the old cap. Sorry, I'm getting confused here. Freeze energy bills, let me put it more simply, at about £2,500 a year. Now, under the cap that was announced at the end of August, that energy bills were going to go up to almost £3,500 a year. That would be about £300. 15% or so of the median UK income. It would be, with under that new cap, it would be such a burden for so many families. Team Truss is talking about freezing that at about $2,500 a year. The question is, how long will they implement this? How long will oil and gas prices be as high? Yes, the price tag that her team is floating is £100 billion. Even if you don't put that in percentage terms, it's a massive number. I mean, just even saying that number, it's hard to get out of the mouth. It is expensive, but this appears to be the plan that's coming that's coming into being. We should hear more on Thursday.
Well, I mean, as you mentioned there, Laurie, I mean, that's an absolutely colossal sum of what some would have described as free money. I mean, you're a number cruncher. Do those numbers add up?
I'm so glad you asked, Charles, because not only are we talking about an energy could cost £100 billion or more, depending on how long it is implemented. The problem with this kind of a price freeze is it tends to become baked in. Once you put it in there, it's hard to pull it back if energy prices remain very, very high. But that isn't Liz Truss's only spending commitment. She would like to raise the thing and raise it fairly significantly. She also campaigned to the Conservative Party on a platform to cut taxes, to cut them fairly aggressively. She wants to roll back a planned increase in corporate tax. She wants to reverse an increase in national insurance contributions, which is a payroll tax. So she wants to spend this money at time as cutting taxes. Going to be very, very difficult to pull off. And remember, the Bank of England is forecasting recession in the UK. That tends to dampen tax revenues, dampen the amount of money going into the UK Treasury. As for whether she can pull it off, let's look to the markets. The markets do not believe in this at all. A big sell-off in UK debt today. And what that means is that people who own UK debt feel that a payback, feel that getting their money back is less certain under these economic plans. They have sold UK debt. That pushes when the price of debt goes down, the yield goes up. The yield on 10-year UK government bonds is topped 3%. That's the highest level in 8 years. So it tells you that the markets are not believing these numbers.
And meanwhile, of course, Laurie, she is going about appointing her new cabinet. Do we know who she'll name as the Chancellor of the Exchequer, which is another way of saying the Finance Minister?
It is, and it's always good to make that distinction. Always good to define what Chancellor of the Exchequer means. We haven't had any official announcements about her cabinet, but the betting is very much on Kwasi Kwarteng, been Liz Truss's real cheerleader in chief during this campaign. We see him now. He's reasonably well respected within the party, but I think that there will be questions over how beholden he is to the new prime minister. He really has been such a vocal advocate during her campaign. He's been the business. He has been much more business friendly than, say, Boris Johnson, the outgoing prime minister, and business is very frustrated with Johnson. They like Kwarteng a little bit more, but I think there are very big questions over how independent he will be. And during her campaign, Liz Truss talked a lot about installing an economic nerve center at number 10, that is at the prime minister's office, which to me almost sounds like a rival economic institution to the Treasury, which typically and habitually allocates money. So I see some potential for sparks to fly there if Kwasi Kwarteng exert independence.
And briefly, Laurie, I mean, we've been talking about the energy crunch and the problem of rising prices in the UK, but how are other countries handling this pain of rising energy prices?
Well, it's an interesting question, and we're seeing a lot of in so many other countries. France was sort of the first to act. They have limited energy price rises to 4%, which is so far below what we're seeing in the wholesale market. But we've also seen a number of French ministers say, this can't go on forever. This is costing us too much money. Do remember, though, that France is more indebted than the UK. On the other hand, they do have the shield of the European Commission and the European Central Bank, so they're not quite as exposed, even if borrowing is higher. Germany looks to be in a bit of a pickle, and Germany, over the past couple of days, has started discussing some kind of a price cap as well. They've also done some the most vulnerable households. So Germany's discussing something very much like what we're discussing here in the UK.
Laurie, thanks very much indeed. Laurie Laird, a RISE correspondent, talking to me there from London, and apologies for the few glitches there in sound and picture from Laurie in London.